Welcome to the 2016 Tahoe Regional Young Professional City Council Candidate Interview Series. We're here with Jason Collin, who before our interviews were supposed to happen last week, ended up in an accident that I'm sure most people have read about in the news. So Jason was very accommodating to let us come to his house for this interview. And as a reminder, TRYP is a politically neutral organization. We don't endorse candidates or ballot measures, and we wanted to make sure to get Jason's interview in along with the other candidates, and that's the reason for our current location. And then again, this video series will interview all 10 candidates. They each have 10 minutes to answer 3 questions they received in advance and 1 free-form question. And the purpose of this video series is to educate voters in the community so they can make an informed decision on November 8th. Thank you for letting us come to your house, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you for accommodating me.
So we'll just dive right in. What are your goals for the city, and how will it look in the next 5 years?
So what I would hope to see in 5 years, when you drive from the Y to State Line, it's a completely transformed experience. So from infrastructure, aesthetics, and accommodations. Infrastructure, we have the roads, we keep our good roads good, and we're rehabbing the roads that aren't in good shape. And then the complete sidewalks, that's a huge piece. We can have sidewalks all the way through town from a public safety side of things, from an accessibility side of things, and then also just from a walkability side of things. So I think that's a huge thing. And then from an aesthetics side of things, I would like to see investment from the city, or to spur investment, private investment in the commercial core. So we have architectural improvements so that the commercial buildings look better and are more attractive, which will then hopefully draw more businesses into town as well. And then on the accommodation side of things, I'd love to see us transform some of the existing motels to quality housing options. So keep them private, but if we can turn those to small, private quality and affordable housing options for locals, I think that'd be great. The other thing too I'd like to see in the next 5 years is to have a priority program for locals. So when there's public contracts going out to bid, that locals do have priority for those.
That's a lot to fit in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Sort of, if you were to be elected to city council, what's sort of your first step towards achieving that?
I think the first, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Measure U, and if we do have the increased money for roads, because I think that'll be a big piece. So the first part is the investment in infrastructure. So our roads, our sidewalks, because with the sidewalks come the drainage and filtration systems for the lakes, so there's a huge environmental component to that as well. So infrastructure is the first piece.
Perfect. And so what concrete actions do you think the city should take to provide more housing affordability in South Lake Tahoe?
Well, unfortunately, I think the city's role in fixing the housing problem is a bit overstated. With the commodities being held up or really under the control of TRPA, that's where the solution is going to ultimately be found. Fortunately, the TRPA has this work group that they've created to start discussing the commodities and how they're being used or not being used, and what we need to do to transform them to meet our needs. So that, I think the city's role with that is going to be to leverage our seat on the TRPA board to get that work group to move faster. Right now it has a 3-year time frame to try to come up with a solution. I think we have to come up with something a lot sooner than that. In addition to that, I think it's working with the other public partners, so with STPUD, to see what can we do to lower barriers that are preventing private businesses, private entrepreneurs from wanting to invest, to develop properties that can provide housing. And then we also need to look and see if there are any grant funding opportunities, if there are any public monies that can be used. And I think we have an obligation to do that and go after those. And then that, even if we could get those, it's still going to be dependent on the commodities with the TRPA. So it'll be kind of hand in hand, see if there is money, and then really push hard with the public partners that we have to try to move forward.
Awesome. So with the known impacts of climate change that it will have on Lake Tahoe, does the city have a responsibility to implement policies to address this?
Yeah, absolutely. We have to do everything we can to protect our natural resources, and we know there's a lot of change going on with the increasing temperature of the lake and with invasive species going on. So what those solutions are, I can't tell you exactly. I'm actually meeting with some people from the climate change lobby tomorrow to find out more about it, just to get myself more informed. But the city absolutely has a role in doing whatever we can to protect the lake.
So perfect. So once you kind of can feel where the city can make the biggest impact, you think that's the direction we should go?
And whether that's policy implementation, policy enforcement, whether it's collaborating with other local entities, whatever that is, we have to do our part.
Perfect. All right. So with the 2 lawsuits brought upon the city by Councilwoman Joanne Connor and your lawsuit regarding the legitimacy of the Measure T ballot measure, do you think that addressing South Lake Tahoe's major issues should be taking in place more in the courtroom and less in the city council, sort of taking away from the city council's hands? Or do you think that the city council should have sort of that more final say?
No, I definitely would love to stay out of the courtroom, and in fact, that's what the lawsuit that I brought forward was trying to do, was to try to keep the ballot initiative about the loop road out of the courts. And what the judge decided was that if it passes, then it will end up in court. So that was really what that was trying to do, was prevent it from costing the city money. So I would love to see things be handled further upstream in a more collaborative approach, and just see how we can work together.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much
Cool,
for
thank
joining
you.
us. Thank you for tuning in to the 2016 Tahoe Regional Young Professionals Candidate Interview Series for the City of South Lake Tahoe. You can watch this interview and the rest of the interviews on our website at TRYP.org or Facebook at facebook.com/Tahoe Regional Young Professionals.